you're ranking for location near me, like food near me. That's people wanting who are hungry, right? That's not somebody who's wanting to buy a franchise in food or beverage, right? So that's a big piece of what we do. And then the other thing that's kind of our special secret sauce is.
Hey everyone, welcome to Marketing Movers. Today we have Mark Renahan, the Vice President of Business Development from Ignite Visibility Franchise. They're an award-winning digital marketing agency for franchisors, franchisees, and franchise development teams. We're excited to have you on the show today, Mark. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'd love to give our listeners a little bit of context on who you are and what you do. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up at IDS leading business development?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in franchising for 12 years now. I originally started my career at Altitude Trampoline Parks. So I was a franchisor. A good friend of mine was the founder. And we grew that brand to 100 plus locations all over the world. We were in it for about a good 8-9 years and sold to private equity back in 2018-19. And from there, came into IDS, to where I helped them get started on their franchise development sales related process. So we were going through COVID, obviously, a lot of people were laying off their sales team. And I had just come from Altitude, where I was running the sales and helping that system grow. So I came over to IDS to create that sales division, and we started selling for franchises who were unfortunately letting people go during COVID. And eventually, they started hiring salespeople again, and then I took over pretty much all of sales for IDS, where we then went through a merger last year with Ignite Visibility, who has just been a powerhouse in marketing for years. Work with Live Golf and Tony Robbins and huge monster brands, non-franchise, but they also had a handful of franchise brands like Neighborly and things like that. So when we came on, we are essentially bolting on as their franchise division. So now our team went from 80-90 employees to 250 employees, and we have now the assets and the support of the Ignite team. So our services have just skyrocketed. And we're continuing to serve the franchise community as Ignite Visibility Franchise now.
Very cool. For the services that you guys offer, how did that expand with the merger? Like, what were you guys offering before, and then what are you offering now?
Yeah. So previously, we were proficient in SEO and content and website development, right? Those were our bread and butters. We focused on building websites for franchisors, for franchisees, and helping them grow organically. Now, we did paid as a part of our service, but that is probably the biggest leap that we've taken since Ignite Visibility, because these guys manage, hundreds of thousands, if not millions a month in paid revenue. And to a point where we have a contact at Google. Right, like you can actually pick up the phone and call Google, which, as you may or may not know, that's extremely rare. Right, they're hard to get a hold of. So when you get to a certain point and a certain prestige with the amount of spend you have, you actually get a Google rep. So we officially have that now, and it's just elevated our paid systems dramatically. Now we've also enhanced our video creative, our video production. Right, we had a third party that we used to use at IDS for video. Now it's in-house. Creative, same thing. We had a third party. Now it's in-house. So we're able to expand our services for not only our existing clients, but all of our new prospects and clients as well.
Very cool. And like for you specifically, on maybe more like a tactical level, has the merger had a big difference on your role and what you do day to day? Or has the biggest difference been like, I now have more kind of tools that I can like sell and provide to our clients in my tool belt?
Sure. Yeah, it's been both. So I was director of business development at IDS, and when the merger happened, I got promoted to vice president of franchise, and so that expanded my responsibilities and my role to not only manage more salespeople and sales team, but also oversee all of the franchising revenue that's going on. So everything that Ignite was already doing with franchising has now come under my roof, and I manage a handful of sales team now, as opposed to just the one or two I had at IDS.
Mm.
So it's very exciting. We're able to work across the board much better. We're able to spread the wealth per se. Our client to employee ratio has basically gone 2 to 1 in the client's favor. So it's very exciting, and it's been great. I mean, honestly, the first private equity experience I had was not great at Altitude. It was a situation where we did sell, and they kind of did the clean house scenario. But in this case, it has been quite the opposite. So it's been very refreshing for me personally. It's been great for my personal growth, my family, my career, and the whole merger. And it's been across the board from our executives down to our entry level employees have all been very satisfied.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
On the sales side of the house, I'd be curious because I talk to a lot of agencies who sell, there's such a wide range of agencies. And I always find it interesting for the folks who have a very specific niche focus versus agencies that are more broad in the avatar that they service. It has big implications on business development, sales process. And I'm always super curious to hear, especially for the companies with a niche focus, how do you go about really dialing in and creating a high quality system or process to attract the very specific customers that you want and then bring them in as a customer into the organization?
Yeah. Yeah. So we typically like to take a kind of state of the union as it is for our prospects and our clients, right? We want to see what is their visibility today as it stands. What are their goals? Where are their pain points? Where are they falling short? But our pre-auditing is extremely detailed, right? And so most or some other agencies charge for this type of auditing. We do it complimentary upfront. So we want to make sure that they're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for them. So we want to kind of get that out the way early, see where they're ranking today, what their visibility is, how their SEO, how their SEM is performing, and then come up with strategic analysis and recommendations based on all of that. And then a lot of times the clients tell us, we're wanting 20, 30, 40 awards a year and we're getting half that, right? And so then we need to kind of go back and we take a look and we take a look at their organic SEO results. We take a look at their paid. And that's where we can kind of say, okay, well, look, you guys are ranking for a lot of consumer related terms, right? You're ranking for location near me, like food near me's. That's people wanting who are hungry, right? That's not somebody who's wanting to buy a franchise in food
Right.
or beverage, right? So that's a big piece of what we do. And then the other thing that's kind of our special secret sauce is the hyperlocal strategies. So we want to focus on the right people in the right areas, right? So we do a lot of persona development, a lot of hyperlocal strategy to make sure we're driving the right leads in the right places.
What are some examples of these hyperlocal strategies?
Sure. So essentially, it could be as broad as a state or East Coast area, but we typically see it perform better when it's much more granular. When I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina. So, for example, we would build out a page on your franchise website that talks to franchise opportunities in Wilmington, North Carolina. And when somebody is searching, say I'm searching for a franchise and it's, food franchise, Wilmington, North Carolina, then you're going to rank and your website speaks to that and has a page on your franchise site that speaks to those terms. You're going to rank much better than, a McDonald's or an Arby's or somebody who's more broad, right? And so we focus much more granular and we do much more higher SEO value within that market to drive their leads. And we're not going to focus in a Dallas, Texas if they're tapped out in Dallas or if they don't want to be in Dallas or California, for instance, right? A lot of people, it's hit or miss if you want to be in California. So there's those types of things that we're not going to waste money in areas we don't want to grow in.
Right. And how do you determine, one of the things you mentioned with like that auditing process was figuring out like, are you a good fit? Are you not a good fit? What is the criteria that you guys use to determine that?
Sure. Yeah. So it typically needs to be, the startups and the mid-level brands who are using the portals or brokers or are just kind of getting the ball rolling. Most of the time, they don't have a more wide open budget to be able to dig into these things. So we want to make sure that you have award goals in the range that we can meet those goals and that we can hopefully outperform those goals. So if somebody comes in, they're saying, I just created a franchise, my FTD will be done in 6 months. Hopefully we can get one deal this year and next year. Like, that's where we would say, okay, well, our services probably won't be best for you until about 6 months to a year from now. That's where we could help you build out your consumer website, build out a franchise development website, start helping you with your location pages, start bolstering up your website to really make an impact. So we want to make sure that those are good fits for us, and it's good fit for the client because we're not the most expensive, but we're not the cheapest either, and our services come with high touch points, high customer service, and it's effective, but it's not free, and it's not affordable for all new franchises.
Right. And I imagine, as you start to get more and more specific about the avatar for you guys, it does start to dwindle down. Like, how many franchises are there that do fit this and can't afford to work with us? In terms of like attracting them or finding them at the very top of the funnel, are you guys using a lot of kind of like SEO strategies for yourself and you're bringing them inbound? Is the sales team doing outbound? How do you find those folks?
Yeah, it's definitely a mix of it all. We've done outbound for many years, and a lot of our clients have been referrals. Frankly, it's been a lot of our work paying off for existing clients, and then they say, "Hey, these guys are great. Go, let me introduce you to Mark and talk to his team." And even if they just do some of the initial auditing process, you're going to love what you see, right? Even if you don't move forward with them. And that's the kind of stuff that we've built this relationship with enough executives in the franchise community to be able to continue to grow strongly. Now, that being said, we are ramping up our efforts. Ignite Visibility on their side does a handful of marketing across industries, not just franchising. So we are tapping into some of that as well, which is going to be extremely beneficial for us. The sales team on their side has benefited from lead flow organically, and ours has mostly been organic and grinding it out on different outbound. So we're going to get back to a little bit of both, and we want to continue to make sure that we're serving the franchise community properly, and our reputation continues to exceed itself.
That makes sense. For the outbound channels that you guys use, are there any channels that have been most effective for you guys, whether it's like email or just straight up cold calling using the phone?
Yeah, we definitely did the cold calling, burn and churn early on, 5-6 years ago when I first started. But we've gotten away from that a little more. Obviously, today's day and age, not everybody answers phone calls, right? Not everyone's answering a phone number they don't recognize. It's actually dropped dramatically from the statistics that we've recently seen. But we have a lot of text message automation that we've seen some success with. We have some partners and some softwares that we utilize to help with that. And then our sequencing and our emailing has still been strong. So we create workflows and we create sequencing with strong case studies, good, light audits or generic audits within those email templates to be able to attract some people and say, "Ooh, that sounds good. I would love for, my company to be like what you just said about your client, Batteries Plus," or something along those lines, right? So we use a lot of similar case studies to be able to showcase our work, but also show people that this is very attainable, right? This is very easy to do if you just trust us and work with us, and we'll get you to your goals.
Right. It sounds like events are also like a big part of the strategy too.
Yes. Yeah. We're always traveling. We love to go to our clients' conferences. Those are typically on the consumer and location franchisee side. But we also always have a presence in the franchise development and the franchise conferences as well, right? IFA and FLDC are typically the staples. But we're mixing in a handful of others with the franchise expos and the shows and those types of franchise conferences. We have the FLDC coming up here in October that we'll be attending, that we're very excited for. We have tons of clients speaking on it at panels, at keynotes, and so we're excited to be part of that one here in October.
Nice. I'd love to shift the conversation towards what the big strategic focus is for the agency now, especially after this merger. What are the goals for you guys over the next 12, 24 months?
Sure. Yeah, so I would say our biggest goal is to start or continue to expand our services on the consumer and franchisee location level. We have at IDS, we were known for franchise development, right? We did franchise development extremely well. We did it for decade plus. Our brand stayed with us for years and years. We have a handful who, had to leave or left for whatever reason and came back and now have been with us again for years. So we built a strong reputation in the franchise development industry. And with that came a lot of the consumer and the location franchisee marketing. And so, our franchise development clients were saying, hey, you guys are just killing it for me here. Can you do my location consumer as well? And it was absolutely like, we have recently bolstered up our consumer employees. We've started what we call FSAMs, they're franchise success account managers. So these guys, we've hired tons of them over the past year or two, and they're made to help the franchisees. So we actually have a high customer service rate to where we're meeting with franchisees one-on-one, right? Most of these agencies don't necessarily meet with them, or they'll get a generic rep or an email or a webinar or something like that. We have the capabilities now to where our staff has expanded. We're meeting with them directly. So we've bolstered that up to make sure that that's the biggest focus for us, and so that customers and consumer organizations know that we do this and we do it just as well as FranDev. So I would say the biggest, we've brought on hundreds over the past year. We're up to almost 2,000 locations that we work with, and we're hoping to double that here in the next year or two.
For those like me who maybe aren't like experts in the franchise space, for context there, what is kind of like almost the definition of terms for, these different focuses, like the consumer, the location consumer, the franchise development? What does it mean and
Sure.
How does it all work?
Yeah, absolutely. So franchise development is, completely different than consumer, right? They're two separate animals. We always like to think of it as, my previous CEO had a great analogy for it. It was, essentially the consumer is a bucket of yellow paint and the FranDev is a bucket of blue paint. And when you mix them, you're making green, right? You don't want to mix those colors. You want them to be separate. You want them to stand on their own feet, be their own colors, and be their own systems. And so FranDev, we focus on it's franchisors or brands looking to bring on new franchisees or new locations, right? So they're targeting those investors, they're targeting those entrepreneurs, they're targeting those people who want to open their brand. Whereas on the consumer franchisee side, where we help, we're actually helping those franchisees and those consumers bring on customers, right? Those guys need to be findable in their local markets, right? So whereas Batteries Plus, for instance, one of our clients, they want to bring on new locations in Wilmington, North Carolina, but then the Batteries Plus store down the road wants to bring in customers to their batteries store, right? And so we do both sides. It's different marketing, it's different personas, it's different approaches. And like I said, we work with 100 plus franchisors, and we work with almost 2,000 locations now. And what we do on the national side, it's those brands still have two sides of the business, right? The FranDev is one, but then the national consumer is another. So that's still, they want to build that brand awareness. They still need to have that national website trickle down to those location pages, right? So we still do national SEO, national content, national website development with the corporate. And then we do that with the local SEO and local website development for those franchisees. So we're a full service agency working on all different sides of their business.
That's fascinating. And like, as I'm thinking about, like, if I'm in your shoes and I'm trying to like plan that out, and I'm like, okay, we've got to like get the locations in Wilmington, North Carolina, then we've got to get the traffic of people to come to the location. At what point do you start? Because you've got two motions kind of going at the same time. When do you start working on the strategies to bring the traffic to the location? Like, how do those two different things kind of play in together timing wise?
Yeah. So we have some clients who do the full suite of products. And so when we're doing on the franchise development side, we obviously want them to sell the location. So we do the marketing in Wilmington, for example. They find a franchisee, they sell the territory. We then can get introduced to them in the pre-opening process, right? And so 6 months before they open their store, we'll meet with them and we'll say, look, we have a grand opening plan. We have a pre-opening plan that we want to get with you and build on so that we can build the excitement and build the awareness in your town. But then once you open, your location page needs to launch, your GBP, your Google Business Profile needs to launch, all of those different terms. So then we have the post opening plan. So we're able to not only help brands find the franchisee, but then we help that franchisee pre-opening, and then obviously the post opening is ongoing for the duration they're open.
What is that timeline? And I'm sure it like varies, but if I'm like, if I'm buying a franchise, and I'm coming in and I'm meeting with Ignite and they're like, we've got you covered on the launch. How long typically from like closing to like launching my location, as long as everything kind of dress happens, how quickly does that process happen?
Sure. So that definitely varies by franchise brand, right? So a company like we work with a lot of home service brands they don't have brick and mortar, right? But then we also work with like Inspire brands who are Dunkin' Donuts and Arby's and those guys, right? Those obviously are brick and mortar. And so those take longer to open than a service based or a zip code based brand that can just get going pretty quickly. So depending on their sales process and depending on their opening timeline is where we figure out with corporate where we need to get introduced to the franchisee. So it varies per brand, it varies per industry, but regardless, we're very flexible and we're extremely customizable to where we'll work with that corporate company, that national brand, and figure out that timeline for exactly what we need to do and when we need to do it.
Super interesting. How has the space, if at all, changed with all of the new technology and AI happening over the
Yeah.
past couple of years?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a ton of AI partners that we're extremely excited about. We're using it internally. We're also rolling it out for our clients as well. So it's definitely changed the landscape of outreach. Obviously, like we mentioned earlier, the phone calls have dropped, right? Business is no longer done on phone calls. Everybody is getting spammed too often, right? And so we need to find alternative ways. And AI has come in and been a great tool to be able to send text messages, to be able to schedule meetings like Zooms and Google Meets and things like that automatically. And so we're utilizing some of these softwares to be able to automate that process. And obviously, internally as an agency, AI has come in and helped shrink our timelines, right? We've been able to create some processes that utilize AI to get some content out much quicker, right? Instead of our content writers, who we have an army of them on staff, instead of them having to write every single word from the beginning, we can have AI create a template or a draft, and then our content writers go in and tweak it, right? And it just shrinks that timeline dramatically, and it's becoming much more efficient as an agency to be able to speed things along and get much more content out there. And there's great debates in the marketing world that's where is SEO still alive? Is it dying? Is content still king? And the biggest thing that we've seen is these AI overviews. Right now, if you Google something, an AI overview comes in and gives you an update on exactly what it thinks, and it gives you the best practices, and it gives you some bullet points. Well, that AI still needs to pull that from somewhere. Right? That AI is not just creating it on its own. It's still crawling the internet. The Google bots are still crawling your websites out there, and they're pulling that information from somewhere, and that's still content. So in our eyes, content is still king. And what we've been able to do is shrink our timelines to be able to put out much more content in a much more effective and efficient manner.
Do you feel like that will create almost like a normalizing effect where like everyone's able to do it more efficiently now, and so now you've got to put out even more content? Or is it like, as long as it's good, then quality is
Yeah,
the most important?
I think we're definitely going to get hit with a lot more content, and you're going to have to kind of work through the weeds a little more. And so I think where that comes in is our quality content writers are still very important, right? You can't just spit out a bunch of AI content and expect it to be 100% trustworthy or 100% accurate or whatever. this is where our team is still extremely effective, right? We believe our team is second to none, and these guys can come in and utilize AI. And it's not whether you use AI or not. You need to be using it. Everyone is using it. It's how you use it, and that's where our team is trained on how to use it, trained on the processes and what we will take it from and trust and what we won't. Right, and so our team is still there, and our team is still able to weed through all of that. And it's unfortunately it's we're getting a lot more content out there in the world, and a lot of people are just copying pasting AI content, and it's unfortunately it's not all trustworthy.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the tools that you guys are using that have been effective?
Sure. So recently we have just partnered with a company called Decimus. We're obviously, using all different chat GPTs and the Gemini that has just come into the Google suite of products now. But Decimus and RevScale and some of these automation systems that we work with have been very, very helpful. So the Decimus is essentially a SMS assistant, AI assistant that helps us connect with people and helps us push our message out to our systems. It's been extremely useful for when we bring on consumer national programs. For what we used to do is one of our business development managers or one of our FSAMs, like I was mentioning earlier, would actually do these outreaches manually, send the text message to every single franchisee, send an email to every single franchisee. Now we can create that template email. We can change the geo tags for where their location is or what their product is or what service we want to offer them, and be able to have our AI assistant help us. So it, again, speeding up efficiency, speeding up the effectiveness, and these programs and these softwares and these tools have just been able to streamline our programs dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah. For you, whether it's on the sales or the marketing side of the house, are there any like inputs, whether it's like YouTube channels, newsletters that you stay kind of plugged into to feel like you're still ahead of the curve?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're constantly reading and analyzing Google's updates and all of their outreach and content that they put out to make sure that we're staying up with all the latest on Google and Meta and all the things that Elon Musk and some of those guys are putting out. But we also have an internal team. So our CEO John Lincoln is extremely heavy on content output, and he stays up with it constantly. He is himself a very well respected person in the marketing world. He's, I forget his followers amount, but he's constantly doing YouTube shorts and constantly doing Innovation Fridays and constantly putting out more and more content to educate the marketing world. And it's not us selling. It's not us, looking for lead magnets. This is us educating the marketing and the non-marketing folks who don't know it. And so I would highly encourage you go take a look at John Lincoln's posts. He's an extremely respected person in the marketing world, franchise and non-franchise, right? Obviously now with franchise, we're getting much more involved on the Ignite Visibility franchise side, but he's been doing this on the non-franchise side for years and decades. So he's an influencer himself, and he puts out phenomenal content, and it's just elevated our entire system. He educates us weekly, bi-weekly, and that's just been a great resource of information.
Well, that's a good segue here, I think, because this has been a super fun conversation for me. I've really enjoyed having you on the show. For anyone who wants to continue the conversation with you or find out more about what you guys do, where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to our website, ignitevisibility.com. Go check out our franchising page. IDS, Integrated Digital Strategy, still is online. We're sunsetting that to Ignite Visibility Franchise, but those are two different ways to find us. And then obviously, my LinkedIn, I'm constantly monitoring. I have teams monitoring it. It's, Mark Renahan and John Lincoln is a big one as well, who is a great lead flow. So come talk to us. Come check us out. We really want to help the franchise community and continue to be respected partners in it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining, Mark. Bye.
Thank you, Sky. Bye-bye.